It's getting late, and I'm about to go to sleep for the evening, but before I do, I would like to talk about the roundedness of the bow arm, and most importantly, what has been described to me by certain teachers as a figure 8 motion. The figure 8 motion is a motion that is normally initiated by a whole arm unit rather than by one specific part of the arm. Mainly that motion is coming from the upper arm. Sometimes it is even connected to the back, and when we start the motion on a down bow, for instance, we even incorporate the chest muscle as well. Famous cellist, former principal of the Concertgebouw Orchestra, Arpad Zamoru, in his pedagogy book mentions not only the upper arm, but keeping the pectoral muscle engaged when initiating sound. Roundedness with the bow arm is so important because you are incorporating everything to work together, almost like a very fine Swiss watch. And it's so easy to store tension in the elbow joint, the wrist joint, the shoulder itself. And I always try to tell my students that the shoulders, if we lift them too high, if we put too much emphasis on our shoulders, will obstruct any motion and any power, and most importantly, any pliability from coming into our smoothness of sound that we hope to achieve by having this figure 8 motion. Figure 8 motion has to be practiced before we even take the actual bow and place it in our hand. We have to be able to visualize just how our arm is moving from down bow to the up bow, back down, back up. And sitting on these concepts is very important. When we ignore the concepts, all too often, we don't give it justice. So by slowing all of these thoughts down and actually, without even holding the bow, doing this figure 8 motion, trying to slowly achieve more of a fluid motion, then and only then will we prepare ourselves to incorporate it into our actual playing. And I quote Bruce Lee when it comes to that figure 8 motion that I have been talking about. Bruce Lee said it best. He said that you have to be able to take the shape of anything, meaning we have to be like water. If water is poured into a glass, it conforms to that shape. So when we're trying to develop our bow arm, that is a wonderful analogy to keep in mind. One other thing I would like to briefly touch upon, and I'm also going to bring this up in my next video, has to do with the third and fourth fingers. The third and fourth fingers of the right hand, which I believe to be the most important fingers. Simply because, and I've done this through my own experiments, but I also read a book by Arpad Zamoru, who I previously mentioned, and he really goes into detail about how the third and fourth fingers transmit power and balance, and will also help in the smoothness of bow changes. mainly going from up bow to down bow. I at first was a little skeptical because there's 3 other fingers that we need to be aware of on the cello. So what I did was I took my 3rd and 4th fingers and just gripped the bow with those 2 fingers. Very hard at first to even keep the bow on the string. But upon doing that, and slowly doing some of the fancier strokes, such as ricochet, I realized just how beneficial it is to be always aware of the 3rd and 4th fingers for balance, for stabilization, for transmission of power, and last but not least, for this smoothness when it comes time to change the direction of the bow. But all the fingers in general, even the thumb, should act as paintbrush bristles. The motion begins with the upper arm, and if we're drawing the bow on a down bow out to the tip, engaging pectoral muscle as well. But once we initiate that movement, everything else has to follow along. Thus, the figure 8 movement, not storing any tension in any of our joints or shoulder, and letting the hand, the right hand, be the last thing to actually change direction. In a sense, changing the direction with our upper arm before the direction of the hand even changes. A concept I picked up from Gerhard Mantle's Cello Technique book, which is also a must-read for those who are serious about cello technique, and even if you're a teacher, it's very beneficial to read a book like this. I hope those concepts help, and I'm about to go to sleep. Thank you. Have a good night.